Tonight, new Suicide Squad does the impossible and makes me actually give a damn about Daniel West Reverse Flash. In Justice League, Flash and become Death, Destroyer of Worlds. And Aquaman goes full soap opera by having Aquaman sleep with his girlfriend's sister. Ay caramba! All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 213 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and it's a fifth week. What does that mean? It means we got a bunch of annuals. We barely have any comics, only 7 that we need to talk about in this episode. And it also means that theoretically I should be doing something more. I should try to flesh this out into an episode that actually has, content. But no. For anyone who was paying attention last episode, I briefly offhandedly mentioned that at some point in the non-discriminate future, I am getting married. So I'm a little bit busy. I'm a little bit doing some other stuff. And as much as I want to keep this show coming out consistently, that means it takes the hit of you are like third on my priority list of things to do at any given point. So sorry, not sorry. Going to continue doing it. Anyway, comics coming out this week. What do we got? Well, in terms of normal issues, things that just couldn't keep their deadlines, we have Aquaman number 44, Superman number 44, and Justice League number 44. In terms of annuals, we have Batman, Grayson, Green Lantern, and New Suicide Squad. Out of that, very important to note, New Suicide Squad is the end of its storyline, so that is absolutely something that if you've been keeping up with that book, make sure you check that out. And Grayson is on annual number 2, and the only reason I bring that up is because Grayson just got done issue number 12. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I am not the best at math here, but I think it's pretty easy to see for anybody here that 12 issues of Grayson coming out monthly equals 1 year. How are you on annual number 2 already if you've had 1 year of someone's cooking the books here to take advantage of a popular title, but it's a good book, so whatever. I'll give them a pass. I'm just pointing it out that it's a little bit shady. So yeah, like I said, I got other things on my plate, so let's go ahead and just try to get through this episode as fast as humanly possible with, I don't know, Justice League. Justice League 44, written by Geoff Johns, art by Jason Fabok. So last issue, the Dark Side War officially start. We had Anti-Monitor and him throwing punches. Everyone on the Justice League had their plans on what they were going to do. And Superman fell into some fire pits and came out all negative looking. So this issue picks up with Wonder Woman talking about the god of laughter named Gelos, or Gelos. I'm going to say Gelos. And she's imagining, or Bruce is imagining, the Joker as they're saying this, because saying the god of laughter is actually just an awful thing that just laughs at humanity's misfortunes. So screw that god. My mom always hated it. And then we cut over to Bruce in the chair along with Hal Jordan. They're flying through boom tube space, and it's yeah, no, I'm in the chair. I know everything, but we're missing a crucial piece of knowledge, and that's what we're going out here for. So they boom tube to this just completely wrecked city, and Hal's oh my god, is this home? Did they already do this much damage? And Batman's just no, this is Earth 3. This is what Anti-Monitor did before he got to us. To which Hal says, oh, okay, then we definitely need to get home now in order to make sure this doesn't happen again. And Bruce says, no, he absorbed all this energy because he was preparing for a war. It's important to figure out why he wants this war. That's what we're really looking for here. And Hal's okay, are you sure you're thinking of this right? You may be a bit more away from the people than you usually are here. And then Bruce just literally tears down Hal, just being this sure showed me that you're not a hero. The ring's the hero. You're just the guy with the ring. And he's all right, well, you're also being an ass, but fine, whatever. If you want to say that, so be it. But we're on the verge of a war, and I'm assuming you still want to stop it. So what do we need to do next? And Batman's well, We need to go where the Anti-Monitor was born, which, as far as I can tell, is in the Antimatter universe, aka the planet Quard. So we cut back to the rest of the Justice League as they're watching Anti-Monitor and Darkseid just go toe-to-toe fighting each other. Wonder Woman gives some stuff about how Steve Trevor joined the fight in order to make sure other people wouldn't have to fight, but whoops, that didn't work out. And then we just see, like, Cyborg's like, yeah, they don't care about us. Like, this war they got going on here, it has nothing to do with us. We're just kind of on the sidelines for this one. Grail comes in and starts fighting against Kalibak and is like, haha, brother, you will die for our father. Is that what you want? And Kalibak says, nah, screw you. And starts threatening her with, like, all these ways that he's going to impale her and gore her and stuff like that. And she's like, what all wonderful ideas. And so she uses her Omega vision that I guess she has to blind Kalibak, at least temporarily, which distracts Darkseid and allows the Anti-Monitor to knock him on his ass. We see that, what's her name? I can't even remember the name now anymore. It's like Lissa or something like that. The one with the last name of Black. She's watching from a hillside saying like, oh, just look at Diana and how she fights. So we then go to Apocalypse where Superman's talking to Lex Luthor. He's, like I said, all negative now. And Lex is like, hey, man, we got to go. The parademons are regrouping. And Superman just immediately squelches through all of them. Just all of them are a mess of guts. And he's like, taken care of. Now, what are we gonna do next? And Lex is like, we can get off of Apocalypse. And he's like, yeah, you sure? Because, like, right now, I can see that your heartbeat's picking up. You're sweating a bit more. You're afraid. And Lex is like, or maybe I'm getting ready for a fight. And he's like, you're gonna fight me. Okay, Lex, sure, yeah, you're gonna fight me. The only reason that you ever stood a chance before is because I was holding back. So we then go back in the middle of the fight. We see Diana's now fighting against Grail. Mr. Miracle somewhere in the fight against Steppenwolf. Like, everyone's just doing their thing. And they explicitly say, okay, look, we need to get in between what's his name? Darkseid and the Anti-Monitor. How do we get between them, break up the fight? And Power Ring, Jessica Cruz says, I'll do it. And the ring tells her, like, you're going to die. And she's like, shut up. No, I'm not. I can do this. And she makes this, like, writhing mass of vines and tentacles and stuff like that does manage to split up Darkseid and the Anti-Monitor. And it also wraps a bit around, like, Kalibak or whatever. But it pisses off Darkseid enough that he says, all right, enough of this. I'm summoning my trump card here. And we see everyone just pauses. And it's like, all right, this is it. Darkseid's growing desperate. And we see that he summons, from the New Gods, the Black Racer, which is just death. It's just a version of death. So we see Jessica is passed out. The Black Racer starts knocking into the Anti-Monitor, and it seems like it's doing some actual damage. So then we cut over to Batman and Green Lantern on Quard. Immediately, they took care of all the native race Quardians. They're all just on their asses. And Batman gets a little ping of knowledge, and he's like, okay, the Anti-Monitor was here. He built his chair here. The chair is called Mobius Chair. His name is Mobius. That's his real name. I'm pretty sure was already established to the reader, but now Batman knows it. And it's like, oh, and he came here to see forbidden knowledge, and he was cursed because of it. And we don't get anything more from that, but we cut back over to the fight. Darkseid now has the upper hand, and he's like, you shouldn't have listened to my daughter. She lied to you. You never stood a chance. Your existence is done now. And so Darkseid's about to land some finishing blows on Anti-Monitor when Batman's like, no, see, this universe, the main universe, has free will at its center. The white light, all that stuff, that's what it all spread from. But the antimatter universe is the opposite. So what is at the center of the antimatter universe is what Mobius, the Anti-Monitor, tried to find. He found it, and he was cursed. It is embodied inside of him now, and Darkseid doesn't know. And we see Anti-Monitor, for some reason, is able to control Flash's body and, like, drags him towards him enough to intercept the Black Racer. And so we get a mashup of Flash and the Black Racer, who is now the new embodiment of death. And we see Batman continues explaining, yeah, he was the first to find it. He touched it. It's the anti-life equation. That's what it is. It gets revealed there pretty soon afterwards. Batman says that he found it, and now the Anti-Monitor is the living embodiment of it. And Anti-Monitor tells Darkseid that pretty much just as quickly. It's like, yeah, you searched so much for it, but I found it. It's in my veins. And he blasts Darkseid, which also caused the Black Racer to go through Darkseid, effectively killing him. And we see a huge mass explosion of energy. All of a sudden, Shazam starts freaking out, saying, like, the gods are upset. A god just died. I don't know what they... Oh, God, they all won out. Everyone starts freaking out about this, that Darkseid's just been killed. And Wonder Woman says, you know, the world erupts, buildings fall, everything's going wrong, and then all of a sudden it's silence, and then I hear laughter. And our last page is Darkseid dead on the ground. So, yeah. Cool. No, I genuinely, I think it's good. It's fine. It feels like an interesting way to turn things here. Darkseid has always been this just looming threat over the DC universe. So to say that he was able to be killed not only ups the stakes for this event, but also makes Anti-Monitor just that much more interesting of a, oh God, how are we going to deal with him? I will say, though, that it does feel like the Justice League is just on the sidelines. Like, they aren't the focus of this anymore. If Anti-Monitor now turns his attention and says, okay, now I'm going to deal with you guys, then maybe we can get a bit more to it. But this one was definitely much more about, let's let them fight. Also, very strange that nowadays in modern comics, Darkseid was also effectively killed, and it resulted in like a much bigger thing. So weird how these things keep on repeating. But yeah, no, I'm typically good with this. Art is great the whole way through. I guess my only real critique is that I like the Batman Green Lantern plot. The Superman plot's probably like C tier for me. All the other stuff where it's focusing on like Mr. Miracle's arguing against Steppenwolf or whatever, because there is like a page devoted to that. It's meaningless. It's absolutely nothing. So maybe there's just one or two too many plot threads going on in this one that Geoff Johns just needs to juggle, and he could cut a few out at this point. But overall, I'm still enjoying the issue. So I'm going to say this one is I'll say it's an 8, and we'll see where we go from there. Superman number 44, written by Gene Luen Yang, art by John Romita Jr. So last issue was finally the thing. It happened. Superman's identity was revealed. And I thought we were going to go directly into modern day, but we do have one more bridging issue here where we open up with the Royal Flush Gang, or at least some version of them. We see that the 10 and Ace are new and siblings, and they have been recruited by the rest of the gang, but they are basically on their way to Clark Kent's apartment building because now that the secret's out, you super awesome. You get to go kill Superman. It's a revenge thing. It's a reputation thing. It's a let's see what we can do. And as they're driving up, they see Clark Kent just on the side of the road, and they're like, oh, hey, check it out. And they straight up blast him with some energy blasts. They get out of the car, and they're just like, hey, we heard that you were able to be, crushing coal in your hands into diamonds. We wanted to come over and visit you. So they keep on blasting him. Superman's trying to hold back. He's just like, hey, no, seriously, you guys got to get out of here. And we see that 10 is kind of a slow one. He's not keeping up. So King is like, hey, get to work. Come on, throw a punch. And he knocks him in the head with his scepter. 10 eventually throws a punch. Superman just immediately pushes him back, takes out the whole gang. They're all on their asses. Ace is the only one left standing, just like, hey, no, well, we surrender. Can you just give me 1 second, though? Just one thing. And turns over to 10 and just starts wailing on him, being like, if you ever insult my brother like that again, I swear to God, I will end you. And Superman's like, whoa, hey, I thought they were part of your gang. What are you doing? He's just like, oh, well, you're faster than a speeding bullet, but this is how we protect our own. So we see some cops come by, they pick up the Royal Flush Gang, and just like, oh, thank you for your help, officer. And they're like, yeah, Mr. Kent, the feds want you, so you're going to need to come with me. But then all of a sudden, over the radio, there's a hostage situation at the Daily Planet. And when the cop turns around, Superman's gone, and he's like, I thought the one with the rabbit ears did that. Oh, well. So we cut over the Daily Planet. We see Steve Lombard is being held hostage by Livewire. And he keeps on talking. He never shuts up. And Livewire's like, shut up, stop talking. And after a while, she's like, you know what? Fine, continue talking, and I will just zap you. Like, I'm just going to fry off something you actually enjoy here. So at that point, Clark comes in just saying, let him go. Livewire's like, haha, you finally showed up. If you come any closer, I'm going to electrify his brains into mush. And Clark's like, it'd probably be an improvement. And in the moment, he's able to come up, grab hold of Livewire's hand, and free Steve. Steve goes running as best he can with his hands tied behind his back. And then Livewire starts blasting Superman, to which we see there's a whole cadre of supervillains here, including Killer Croc, Killer Frost. I'm assuming some other killers. They're also all here. We cut over to a news report that is being given from outside the Daily Planet, and we see Lois and her dad are watching this in some sort of military base. And I think it's Sam. I believe Samuel Lane. That seems right to me. The dad is like, you did good, honey. He was a danger to the American people. I am proud of you for outing Superman. And she's like, that's not really my intention. I didn't want that to happen. But as the news report says, hey, things are bad. There are a lot of villains up there. She's like, Dad, you got to send in your troops. And it's like, don't worry, we've got the hostages taken care of. It's like, not for the hostage, for Clark. He's a friend. Please, he's important to me. And then we see some weird CIA looking dudes come in asking for the dad. And he's like, oh, excuse me, honey, I got to go for a while. So we cut back to Clark. He's in the middle of the fight. He manages to grab hold of Livewire, block her eyes, and guide her hands to electrify pretty much all the rest of the villains here. I think Atomic Skull's also in the blast or whatever. But once they all manage to keep some distance, Superman's now got some breathing room. He starts like bleeding off energy. He starts looking like he's going for a bit of a solar flare. Not actually, but he's doing something. He manages to attack Killer Cross, take out Atomic Skull, just the whole 9 yards. He's using his strength. Finally gets over to Croc and says, all right, where are the rest of the hostages? And Croc immediately points him down to a supply closet. And inside we got Jimmy, Perry, the rest of the gang. But as he gets inside, all of a sudden there's a man with a gun at the door. And he says, hey, Clark, remember me? And he's like, no, you're wearing a mask. And so he takes off the mask and says, I used to work here. I brought you your mail. We used to talk about that one sports team. And he's like, yeah, your name was Dylan. Like, what are you doing? We can end this peacefully. And he's like, 2 months ago, Titano got out and he threw a subway car that killed my wife. And I always thought it was just a random freak accident. But it turns out it wasn't. It was because I worked with you. And Titano was using that as leverage, and he was killing the people I cared about just because I knew you. It was revenge. And he starts unloading into Clark. Obviously, the bullets are just popping off of him. And he's like, look, Dylan, I'm sorry about your wife, but like, you got the events out of order here. That's not what happened. And we see the bullets, like stray bullets, are almost hitting Perry, Jimmy, all the rest of them. But he manages to tackle Dylan, take him down. And he's like, all right, look, it's over. Let's get out of here. But Dylan gets one last spray off, and a bullet hits Perry in the shoulder. So ER immediately cut to, and he's like, yeah, look, Dylan was a whack job. And this Perry talking, Dylan's a whack job, but he's not wrong. Like, the villains, now that your identity is out, are going to come after people you cared about. And as a reporter, we take on a certain amount of risk, but this is knowingly coming in and putting ourselves in danger. Like, and for what? For you to keep this lie of a life of yours? And Clark's like, it wasn't a lie. And he's like, nah, cut that bullshit. I'm not up for it. Like, and the worst part is you were fooling me. And he he slaps Clark, knocks the glasses off him, just being like, you don't need those. You know you don't. Get that lie out of here. Consider yourself dismissed. And as he's leaving, he passes by Lois. And Lois is like, Clark, you good? She goes over to Perry and just like, hey, Perry, how you feeling? Just like, well, you tweeted out the story of the year instead of publishing it through us. So guess what? You're going to be making that up. You're writing a proper article tonight. And then we get one last bit where Jimmy has volunteered to help Superman. They just somehow hack into all the video feeds, showing off a video. And he's like, hello, hi, I'm going to keep this short. You all know my super identity now, so be it. But I don't want anybody going after the people that I cared about. Anybody who dares go after the people that I care about trying to get to me, I will put the hurt on you 1,000 times harder than whatever it is you do to them. That is a guarantee. And we see Lex is like, just somewhere randomly. So Superman's standing over the rooftop looking over the city. Lois comes up and he's like, what are you doing here? And just like, look, we need to talk. We may not agree with what I did, but I said we'd get through this, and the way you were talking in that video, you sound a lot, edgier. You sound like you're not Superman. It's like an eye for an eye sort of thing. And Superman's like, yeah, this is what I have to do to protect my own. This is what I'm not as powerful as I was before. I can feel my energy is not coming back to full anymore. It's draining away. I don't know what's happening, but I need to be able to protect the people I care about. And Lois is like, okay, well, that's not how Superman's supposed to work. And he's like, well, not anymore. But yeah, that's how it is now. So we see him flying away. He goes into a motel. His card's canceled, so he has to use cash. And we see him take a piece of, I assume some sort of glass or kryptonite or something, some diamond maybe, and he starts cutting his hair. How we get to buzz cut version Superman soon after. However, there's one last little bit here, which I'll just summarize because it's all just a lot of cryptic, like, ooh, this is upcoming. The new body of Hoarder Root meets up with a woman named, I don't even know what her name is here. Came up with like one line. I'll see if I can find it. Urei. Y-U-R-E-I. And he's got a new body. He's like, oh, I think Father will approve because Father always cast me aside, and that's why I became Hoarder Root. I hoard these things, and I don't let them get away because you never know when they might be useful. And we see the shadow creature thing that's been in all the other books is waiting at a certain portal, and Hoarder steps out saying, I'm going to force the Man of Tomorrow to help us remake the world. So who is the father character? Who's Urei? Tune in next time to Superman Z. Yeah, it's not a bad issue. Again, John Romita art's not great. I hesitate to even say good, but it's okay for what is going on here. The writing is fine as well, but it does feel like this is just a bridging issue. This is the thing of, okay, we've already established where he's going to be in all the other books. How do we get him there? How do we get him to the opening of Divergence #1, the Free Comic Book Day issue? So in that sense, it's fine. It is just a little bit of, okay, another chapter here. I'm hoping that the next part of this is going to be skipping ahead, is going to say, all right, now we're set well after the point, and we can just do our own story in this post-identity universe. But whatever we get, I do like Yang's stuff in general. I trust him with the character. I'm curious to see where he goes. So I'm going to say this is just a 7 for me. It's honestly, if the writing were anything less than what it was, if it was anything less than what I think is competent, be it a 6.5 or a 6 just because of the art. Really not a fan of that, but 7. Good job. Aquaman number 44, written by Cullen, Bunn, art by Alec Morgan. So last issue we got the reveal that Mara was replaced by someone, is claiming to be her sister at the very least. This issue is kind of a bottle episode in its own thing. So we cut to Atlantis, we see it's nighttime, Mara, quote-unquote Mara, is asleep in her bed, and all of a sudden Aquaman teleports in. He's got a knife in hand. It seems very brutal, and as she wakes up, she's like, oh, what's going on? She's like, whoa, sorry, I just wanted to talk to you. Like, please don't call the guards. I just wanted to have a chance to talk. I didn't want to fight. And she's like, what's with the knife? And he's like, in case the guards were here. Sorry. Yeah, that wasn't well thought out. So at this point, I mean, she just for a little bit of cheesecake factor, she is topless in bed. Never anything is seen, but it's always there. So Aquaman comes over and is just like, hey, look, I really do just want to talk. And he's like, okay, well, you showed up here. Like, you could have talked through official channels. Why are you doing it like this? But fine, whatever. If you want to do it, say what you got to say. And he sits down next to her and just be like, what happened between us? Like, I left and I thought things were cool, and now things are, like, less cool. You're having me tried for treason. And she's like, you are choosing to stand with an enemy of Atlantis, and yeah, that's probably where things went wrong. And he's like, that's not what I'm doing. You know that's not what's happening. And he says, like, look, there's a whole bigger part of this. And she's like, I know about that. Like, there's another dimension bleeding in, but you're choosing to stand with them instead of with Atlantis. And I mean, like, just look at you. Your whole new costume. You look like you're a warlord. Like, you are against us as Atlantis. And he's like, no, I am king of Atlantis. That's still what I am. I'm still trying to protect all the people. And then he just does the breakdown for, I guess, people who weren't paying attention to the previous issues, saying that there was an ancient city of Atlantis before it sunk. It was constantly embroiled in war. Eventually, a king stepped up and united Atlantis, but some people didn't like the king, used some dark magic, made a mirror shadow copy of Atlantis called Thule, and Thule just got worse and worse and worse, and now that the magic is breaking down, it's bleeding back into reality, and it threatens all of the world, not just Atlantis. And Mara's like, you're an idiot. Like, you think that those people are actually Atlanteans or that you need to care for them. That's not the case. And he takes the idiot part especially hard, just like, wow, okay, I guess thanks for being honest. And she's like, look, you are so determined to save everyone. Did you ever think that maybe it's just being used as leverage against you? That they're planning something, awful, and they're using your stupidity here to try to save everyone in order to launch their real attack? And she tries throwing a punch at this point. Aquaman just stops it, being like, hey, I get it. You want to protect Atlantis. I respect that. That's why I want you to be my queen. But, like, this is bigger than just Atlantis. This is a whole world thing. And at that point, the guards hear her, like, struggling, and they ask if she needs help. And she's like, no, you're free to go for the evening. And Mara leans in to Aquaman's ear and just like, oh, well, I can see how things can be as well. And they start making out. We get an underwater sex scene. It happens. And then it cuts to the next morning. Aquaman's just in bed with her and just like, wow, that was... whew. And she's like, was that a mistake? Do you think that was a mistake? And he's like, no, not at all. I just, I'm not changing my mind on this. I hope you know that. Like, I'm good job, A+, go team. But, like, I'm still going to keep doing what I'm doing. And at that point, we see, for whatever reason, the sister gives up the game, turns back into her normal self, and says, haha, gotcha. It was me the whole time. And Aquaman's like, where's Mara? Who are you? And just like, oh, my name is Siren. I'm Mara's sister, but you can call me Mara if that's what gets you off. And he's like, all right, this is messed up. I don't like this. Where's Mara? Just no more games. And he starts charging at her. And she reveals, yes, Mara is my sister, but, you won't kill me after all that we shared. Wink, wink, wink. And she's just very up on that point there that they had sex. So... at that point, we see Siren has all the same powers as Mara, obviously, because she's been using that. So she uses the water, knocks Aquaman against the wall, and starts freezing it, like making it an ice pillar. And just like, oh, you're lucky I need you alive. Otherwise, I'd have killed you right here and now. But we got to keep that royal blood around for the intended purpose or whatever. And at that point, she just says, like, Mara would probably agree with me that you're being an idiot. Sisters tend to think a lot like that. So Aquaman uses his new trident and dagger combo to escape from the ice pillar, starts charging after Siren again. Once again, he gets blasted back by a bit of whirlpool stuff, but he manages to swim through it and is just like, look... you may think that you're Mara's equal because you have all the same magic, but you are nowhere near as good as she is. And he knocks her back. She once again shapeshifts into Mara, just being like, oh, I can slip into something more comfortable. And he's like, stop it. I don't want that. But he's taken off guard just long enough to get stabbed in the stomach by a hidden knife. And she's like, oh, don't worry, you'll live, maybe not for long, but just long enough. And that's when the guards come in. Aquaman teleports out, just being like, all right, we're not done here. I'm coming back for you. And when he teleports away, we see, because he was losing blood and he wasn't able to focus, he teleported somewhere randomly. And as he looks around, he sees that he is on some sort of alien planet with like 3 suns and 5 moons. So, got to figure out where he is now. It's a quick read. It's a very fast one, but I do really like it. It's weird because when I look at it just kind of written down, the fact where it's like, oh, they argue for a bit and then they have sex and then the reveal and then he teleports away, like not a lot happens. But the way it's told, the way that it is progressing things a little bit slower here, because that's kind of been my complaint in previous issues, is it feels like we're playing catch up. We're playing this thing where they drop us into the middle of everything's wrong. How did we get here? I like the fact we're slowing down a bit here more, and we're taking our time to say, here's the reveal, and then we're going to keep going with it. The alien planet thing's a bit weird. We haven't really done that with Aquaman, so we'll see how that works out. But yeah, it's honestly, I really enjoyed reading this one. I think it was a very well done issue. The Mara sister, Siren, she's a little bit quirky, but we'll see what happens by the end of the arc. But I'm going to say this one easily gets to like 7.5 for me. I hesitate with the 8 because there's just a couple of faces in the art, and it's not 100% like a great issue, but it's very good at the very least. Batman Annual number 4, written by James Tynion IV, art by Rogê Antônio. So this is set, I guess, in between the idea of Bruce coming back, but before like we actually cut to him coming back. It's somewhere in that in-between section where, if you remember, in continuity, after Endgame happened, Arkham Asylum, or not after Endgame, after Eternal, Arkham Asylum was destroyed and Wayne Manor was converted into the new Arkham Asylum, then titled Arkham Manor. How do we undo that is the quick and dirty story of this book. So we see Julie Madison and Bruce Wayne, post-amnesiac, are going into the place, and Julie's like, come on, you got to feel something about this place, right? And he's like, no, nothing. I'm just hungry. Like, let's go in there. And it's raining and it's all stormy or whatever. But he doesn't want anything to do with this place. He's like, oh, we could tear this down brick by brick for all I care. And as they get inside, Alfred welcomes them, being like, oh, Miss Madison, good evening. Oh, let me welcome you in. And he starts escorting them through the house. And he basically says, like, yes, this place, the Rose Garden, is a fantastic place for a wedding, if you'd be interested. Just saying, just putting that out there as a little thing or whatever. And Bruce looks around. He starts looking around the house. He comes across one of the big portraits of Bruce Wayne. And he's like, Alfred's like, oh, is something the matter? Is anything going on there? And he's like, no, nothing at all. And in steps Jerry Powers, the head of the Powers Corporation. And she's like, well, I see you made yourself at home. That's great. Cool. Awesome. And they share greetings for a moment. Powers is like, yeah, we've met before, but I get it. You're an amnesiac. No big deal. And he's like, yeah, anyway, this is why I want to do it for you. Arkham Asylum was originally here. It got moved here after everything going on there. God only knows why we thought that was a good idea. Jesus, that was a 6-issue miniseries that went nowhere. But once the bankruptcy came in, once all that happens, all your assets were in limbo. I was able to buy it up pretty easy. The Arkham people came to my door and said, hey, we've actually got a good way that we could like expand this and make it better for healing or whatever. And then Jeremiah Arkham went extra crazy, I guess, again. And so he's out, and Jerry Powers is like, screw that. I don't want anything to do with Arkham here. So I just got rid of them all. And they're like, what do you mean got rid of? Like, where are all the crazy people now? And it's like, oh, don't worry. We made deals with Blackgate and some other local hospitals and stuff like that. They are getting the care they need. They're doing like the time they need to do. And we got all of them out earlier today. And we see that it was accompanied by Batman and other members of the GCPD. And they said there were only 3 people who were like theoretically real problems: Clayface, Mr. Freeze, and Riddler. Clayface because obviously he can change his shape, he can change into whatever he wants. So they electrified him to freeze him up and then send him on his way as a statue, basically. Mr. Freeze, they just dosed him and then put him into an ice cream truck. So whatever, he was fine. Riddler was the hard one, though, because he had to be changing cells daily because he kept on making escape plans. And so rather than risk taking him out of his cell at all, they literally just cut his cell out of the house and they transported him in that. And they're like, yeah, that's fair. You're going to get that all taken care of. We'll bill you. No worries. And Powers is like, yeah, no, look, I'm happy to hand over the house to you again. And Bruce is like, okay, but like, why? You could be selling this place for millions. And she's like, oh, well, I mean, I could, but this is your place. This isn't my history. And he's like, it's not mine either. And Julie's like, hey, Bruce, come on, we came all this way. And Jerry's like, hey, Alfred was the one who came to me and said you were super eager to get back in this place. If that's not the case, I got a nephew who would absolutely love to be moving in here. And Alfred's like, let's all go and sign the papers in the other room before we say other things that we might regret. And so they walk into a nearby office, and Alfred's like, hold on, wait a minute. Did you guys change anything else about the layout when you were converting this back from Arkham? And they're like, no, this wing was pretty much completely untouched. And it's like, okay, well, this is where the ballroom was. This room should be like 5 times the size of this place in there. And then all of a sudden the wall starts morphing, and Clayface speaks up saying, guess the jig is up. And we see Clayface attacks Alfred and Julie. They are immediately just dragged down into a basement or something like that. Jerry and Bruce are surrounded. Jerry presses a Batman button, to which a hole in the wall opens up, and we see Clayface, Mr. Freeze, and Riddler. And Riddler goes, ha ha ha, you really didn't think we wouldn't put a jammer up? Yeah, no, you're not going to be able to call Batman. It's just you and us now. And she's like, what do you want? And they say, from you, Miss Powers, nothing. You're just caught in the crosshairs there. We really just want Bruce Wayne. We want to have a little chat with him. So Riddler steps up, just being like, yeah, you know, we had to work out the kinks, make some Clayface clones to make them think that they transported the right ones. But no, we did it all just to come across you. And Bruce is like, I have no idea who you are. And he's like, wow, okay, you are an amnesiac. I mean, I heard about it, but still, it's crazy. Like, how do you deal? Like, whenever people, like, wave to you on the streets, do you have to think to yourself, did they see me in a magazine because I was famous? Or, like, are they a friend? Is that frustrating for you? Well, either way, don't worry. We're here to sort this out, because I'm here to ask you just one question, Bruce. What are you? And Bruce is like, I don't want to play games. Can we not do that? And he's just like, oh, nope, you were playing the game the moment you stepped foot into the manor. So that's what we're going to do here. And here are the rules of the game. And Mr. Freeze just comes up behind him being like, if you move an inch, I'm going to blast you with this freeze gun and you will be killed. And he's like, yep, and that's basically it. So he starts escorting him down some hallways. Riddler's on top of some intercoms, just being like, all right, well, let's get started with the game. And then Alfred turns the corner with a shotgun. It's just like, nope, this is how this game is played. So he shoots Mr. Freeze. It more or less just wounds him, temporarily takes him out. And Bruce follows Alfred down into some underground tunnels of the manor. And he's like, yeah, well, luckily they didn't realize these tunnels were here. We should be fine for a little bit. And Bruce is like, what where are you leading me? And they get into a room with a bunch of guns. And he's like, we have an armory down here? It's like, oh, no. These are all just your father's old, like, hunting guns and whatever else. This isn't anything bigger than that. You just didn't like them being up in the house after everything that happened. And Bruce is like, okay. Well, if they block the Batman signal, it has to be one of, like, the Arkham style blockers. It's just like a small flashing box. Have you seen one of those around? And Alfred's like, I have no idea, no clue. And Bruce is like, okay, well, what's with all the tunnels and all the security and stuff like that? And he's like, you're a very secure public figure. Don't want to make you think it's anything more than that. And he says, you know, you've got a bunch of tunnels, whatever else going on, a bunch of sensors and all these other things, but also my own little touch, my thing that I suggested is that the chandelier is electrified, and you just have to say the word canasta in order to make it drop. I think that's fun. And Bruce is like, okay, fine, whatever. So he questions Alfred and says, is there any other reason they might be hunting me down? And Alfred's like, no. And he's like, great, awesome. And Alfred's like, look, if you're going to go back up there, take the gun. And he's like, I don't know how to use it. And he's like, just like hit them with the blunt end at the very least. I don't want you getting hurt. They're dangerous. And then all of a sudden it starts getting very cold in the room. A wall of ice separates Alfred from Bruce, and Mr. Freeze just punches through the wall. And he's just like, all right, look, I don't know what that was all about, but now I'm extra pissed off. So he gets a hold of Bruce, starts dragging him back through the tunnels, and he's like, look, if it were up to me, I would freeze you solid and take an ice pick to you and then let you melt out in the summer sun. But you would not appreciate what we're trying to do here if I let you die that quickly. So you got to see this. And he drags him out into the tunnel, and inside are ice sculptures of Martha and I don't want to say Jonathan. Jonathan is Superman. What is his name? Thomas Wayne. And he's like, Riddler just comes over the intercom and once again, it's just like, Bruce, this is where it all began. I've looked into your history. You were in that alleyway, and then all of a sudden they were killed. That must have inflicted a lot of trauma on you. And Bruce is like, that's not my story. I don't care about these people. I have no memory of this stuff. And it's like, no, Bruce, of course it's your story. That's what happened. And he takes the gun, he smashes the ice sculptures, and he's like, yeah, well, I looked up on what happened after that. Like, aka the stuff that was flashbacks in 0 Year. And he's like, you did some really messed up stuff in your childhood, which makes sense. You were traumatized. Fair enough. But here's the thing, like, you were actually on the verge of crazy. And I have reason to believe that, but like, you were right there, just on the border of that. And we see Clayface makes a Julie clone because they're talking about like, oh, Julie was in your elementary school class. She would remember how you were back then. And then it just fizzles out in his arms. So they make their way further back. Turns out one of these rooms was converted into the electroshock therapy room. And Riddler says, yeah, I was in here one time. I was getting some treatment. And then I came across some papers that said that you were once here begging to have electroshock therapy to take away whatever memories. And then you ran out scared before you could do it. You chickened out. And you disappeared for all those years. Nobody knew who you were. And at this point, Bruce is just running through the manor. He's trying to escape, but Clayface is blocking him at every turn. Like, there's nothing he can do. And he's just like, what kind of person does that? Disappears for 8 years. People were mourning you. They thought you were dead. And you didn't think to ever speak up? You're the monster here, Bruce. You're a horrible person. And so he manages to make his way back to the library. Riddler's just sitting in the chair. And he's like, so... have you answered the question yet? What are you, Bruce? So we just want to know. And we see he's unwilling to answer, so Clayface brings back up Julie and Alfred and all them. And he only yells for Julie, and tries to get to her. And he's like, no. You got to say the answer first before anything else. And like, what is it? What changed about you in that alleyway? What made it so you had to run all the way to the other side of the world for all those years? And he asks one last time, what are you? And Bruce says, crazy. All right, is that what you wanted to hear? I'm crazy. The previous me was some sort of damn lunatic. And Riddler's like, yep, that wasn't so hard. And that's why we have to make you suffer. Because when you came back with this idea, whatever it was inside of you, that made you want to fund the Batman. You gave him all of his stuff or whatever. So you materially made our lives worse by doing that. And so why should you be able to have this brand new life where you get off scot-free without any of your previous trauma holding you down, whereas we have to go into the slammer? You're just as crazy as we are, and yet you're able to go free. That's not how this plays out. That's not how this is going to go. Riddler like opens up his shirt, shows all the scars that Batman has given him over the time. He's like, no, this is because of you. This is absolutely your fault just as much as it is Batman's. And they each say like, yeah, look, Mr. Freeze could be with Nora. It's all his fault. Clayface could have been a great actor. It's all his fault. Riddler could have retired after 0 Year. It's all his fault. And so we see Riddler goes over to a shelf and says, I bribed a guard to get this in here. It took so much research to find out what was the exact make and model of the gun that shot your parents, but I got it in here. And now I'm going to inflict this new version of you with just as much trauma. And he aims the gun at Julie. And at that point, Bruce dives for the shotgun that Alfred gave him. He lines up a shot towards Riddler. And Clayface is like, whoa, hold on. Bruce Wayne is very anti-gun. You've been very, very vocal about that. And Bruce goes, yeah, well, things change. And he takes the shot, misses Riddler. And Riddler says, ha, I'm going to continue on anyway. Mr. Freeze punches him, and Bruce says, I wasn't aiming at you. I was aiming at the box, the little flashing box that's blocking all of the signals getting out. I saw it. I took the shot. Miss Powers, please call Batman. And Riddler's just like, oh no. Oh God. And Bruce says, oh, and one last thing, canasta. So the chandelier falls down on top of Clayface. it manages to deform him long enough to encapsulate Mr. Freeze and then electrifies him so that Mr. Freeze is now stuck inside of Clayface, so they're now no help. And Riddler's just seeing his whole plan break down, and Bruce comes up just being like, you know what crazy is? Crazy is setting a fun house to catch somebody instead of just trying to escape. Crazy is focusing all your rage on a grudge rather than trying to fix your own life. Like, I know I was difficult, and I know the previous Bruce wasn't great, but like, at least he did what he thought was right. Also, I'm going to give you some news scars. And he just kicks Riddler in the face. So we see next day, GCPD comes in. They bring out Riddler. Mr. Freeze, Clayface, takes care of them all. And Miss Powers is like, so I take it you don't want the house after all that. And Bruce just looks back at the house being like, I don't know. I mean, could be a nice place for a wedding. What do you say, Julie? And Julie's like, I am not stepping foot in that house until you have it scanned for like monsters and lunatics and everything else. And if you don't do that, Bruce, then you're crazy. And there's like a Looney Tunes not actually, but there may as well be. It's a solid issue. I appreciate that this is a story that can only be done during this specific time period where Bruce is an amnesiac. This idea where he is cured of his trauma, and obviously his identity isn't out because that would be a whole extra thing. But the idea that the crazies here have still managed to connect him to Batman, still want to get revenge on essentially Batman's acts. And it feels natural, but more importantly, that idea of you don't get to live without trauma. Like, that's not something that we're going to let you do. And he finds a way above it because deep down he is still Batman. He is still able to stop these things from happening, unlike that night in the alley. So, no, I think it's a very well-written issue. Art-wise, it does stand out a little bit from what's going on. Rogê Antônio is great, just nowhere near the same style as Coccolo, so it definitely stands out like book-wise, but it's an annual, so I come to fully expect that. It's solid writing. So, yeah, I'd say this one is, I'm going to say it's an 8. I'm feeling it's up at that level for me. I don't think it's quite at the 8.5 because it is kind of mired down by the fact that it's just like playing cleanup, I guess, with a lot of continuity of saying like, yeah, Arkham Manor happened, but like, don't worry about that. We're going to just ignore that part and we're going to move on. So, you know, a little bit on that, but still it's a very solid 8 and definitely worth checking out. New Suicide Squad Annual Number 1, written by Sean Ryan, art by Philippe Briones. So this is the conclusion of the story arc. It is directly linked up, not one that you can easily skip. In the previous issue, we had Black Manta come in and basically say, hey, I'm part of a team. We came to assassinate you. Can you forgive me? And we left off on a cliffhanger. We then pick up with Captain Boomerang, who is inside of a big tube in the town square being filled up slowly with water, saying, yeah, he came in here and he was a prick and now he's going to drown for his sins. And we see a bunch of townspeople are watching this happen. And then Reverse Flash comes in. Reverse Flash is kind of the main character of the story. He comes in and he sees some kids and it's like, oh my God, kids, what happened here? And they start throwing rocks at him and he's like, gee, all right, cut it out. What is going on? And he like flares up with some Speed Force energy. All the kids go running. And they're like, what got into those kids? And he goes down a nearby alley and sees all of these dead soldiers from the League and just like, oh my God, what happened? And in chimes Harley, who's just sitting there, blood all over her face, saying like, yeah, you were right. And she's like, what happened? And she's like, well, guards kept coming. I kept killing them, but the kids stopped laughing, even though I thought it was hilarious. And I'm always the last one laughing. You were right about me, Reverse Flash. This is all I am. And Harley's like, look, I wasn't always like this. My dad hurt me when I was young. My own sister called me a monster. And she's like, and you aren't one anymore? And he's like, I don't know, but I do know that I don't want to be, and I'm hoping that's enough. And Harley's like, I don't think it is. So then we cut over to Black Manta talking to the leader of the League. And he's like, look, there is a problem here. My former teammates, they're not going to be a problem anymore. The problem is that I got a bomb in my neck, and as soon as they realize that I've turned tail here, that's going to be something we need to take care of. So I need you to take that out if I'm going to stay with the league. And he goes, what if we got you on TV announcing this and how the United States is responsible for this team of supervillains? And then your head explodes right in the middle of that, because obviously they would try to stop you. That'd be some powerful imagery. And he's like, I'm sorry, what? And he's like, yeah, but like, it's for the cause. You believe in the cause, don't you? And then all of a sudden they're interrupted by a guy coming in saying like, hey, the clown girl killed a bunch of our guys and then escaped. And it's like, all right, well, fine. Black Manta, come on, you're coming too. So they head down, they take a look at all the soldiers, and Saladin's super upset, just being like, all right, look, you brought her here. How could this have happened? You should have told us. And he's like, look, I can't control Harley Quinn. I gave up on that one arc ago. Like, dude, it's her own thing going on here. It's like, all right, well, what about the other one? What about Deadshot? And he's like, I don't know. How should I know? He's like, what do you mean you don't know? He's like, what? How am I supposed to know? What are you talking about? Saladin's just like, this is unacceptable. You're being unacceptable right now. So we cut over to Deadshot, who's watching Boomerang drown. Like, he sees him like up to his neck in water, barely staying afloat. And he's like, well, I guess I should save him. Maybe. And he looks over and he sees like he's about to shoot the tube, but then he follows the pipe coming out of it over to the water pump. And he's like, or I could just stop it pumping in water and let him tread water for a while. That'd be a little bit more deserving of what Captain Boomerang deserves. And he's about to shoot the pump, but all of a sudden his arm starts acting up. He starts having pain as he has before. And he's like, damn, all right. I used to make a shot like this in my sleep, but now I'm just like all shaky or whatever. And he takes the shot, he misses, he ends up hitting a soldier nearby, which alerts all the other soldiers, and they start firing off at Deadshot. He takes cover as much as he can. As the firing stops, he hears the front door of the apartment he was hiding out in open up. He immediately starts shooting at the front door. Turns out it was Reverse Flash, but Reverse Flash just zipped right in, and he's like, you're wasting your bullets, right? And says, hey, if you're here, go save Captain Boomerang. I was about to save him, but like I couldn't. And he looks through the scope, and Reverse Flash is like, yeah, I already did. I brought Harley there. She's got him. So Reverse Flash is becoming a bit more capable. We see he's doing his thing. It's just like, all right, cool. We got to get moving. So Deadshot, Captain Boomerang, Harley, and Reverse Flash are all hiding out in a building. Captain Boomerang's basically unconscious at this point. And Harley is essentially catatonic. She's not responding well to anything. So Reverse Flash is like, all right, so that just leaves Parasite. And Deadshot's like, who? He's like, big purple guy, absorbs energy? Oh, right, I completely forget that he's a member of our team. Anyway, whatever. Where's he at? And it's like, oh yeah, he's locked up inside the big armory building. And they try to figure out how they're going to get in there, especially since they're essentially down 2 teammates, considering Captain Boomerang and Harley are not responsive. And Reverse Flash is like, all right, well, I feel up for it. How about you? You want to go? And Deadshot looks at his hands and he's like, yeah, I'm ready. So then we cut back to Belle Reve. We see Vic Sage making a call to the Secretary of Defense or State or whatever, basically saying like, yeah, Waller wholeheartedly agrees with the plan, and I'm surprised that she said yes to it as you are, but yeah, it's a win-win for everybody. We'll have some eyes on the ground. Sounds good, and I'll talk to Waller as soon as we can. She's going to be thrilled with her new job. So then we go over to Manta and Saladin, who are standing around the time bomb, and he's like, Manta's like, are you sure this is a good idea? And he's like, yeah, of course it is. Why shouldn't it be? And it's like, well, because my teammates are apparently still out there causing you trouble. I think it's more important to focus on them right now, because like if we just focus on your little marketing ploy, that might get out of control. And Saladin's like, I really don't like this whole talking back to me thing that you've started doing recently. This seems like you're just wavering in your beliefs. Why don't we just go with the plan here? And he's like, I'm not wavering. I just was trying to advise. And then all of a sudden there's a big explosion outside, and they're like, crap, what's that? We see Deadshot and Reverse Flash are causing all this chaos. Deadshot's got some sort of an energy gun. He fires at some of the guards. One of the guards crashes into a wall full of venom, aka Bane's growing stuff, and his muscles just start swelling up to this enormous size, and he passes out. Theoretically dead, but I'll get to that later. As more explosions are happening, Deadshot tells Reverse Flash he's got to hurry up because he's running out of weapons, and as he finally gets to the door that he needs to get into Parasite. He's just breaking all the locks. We cut back to Saladin, who's like, "This is all your fault, Manta. You have brought chaos to my doorstep. I'm blaming you." And immediately Manta's like, "I literally told you that we should deal with that before we do this broadcast." He's like, "No, you just want to delay because you don't want to die. That's it. You're afraid to die." And he's like, "I ain't afraid of nothing, no how." And he's like, "Oh yeah, well, prove it." And he's like, "Dude, I just don't see the purpose of my death." And he's like, "It is to strengthen our cause and show how committed you are." And Manta's like, "I am worth so much more to you alive. I guarantee you that." And he's like, "Oh, so you're not willing to, you're saying no, you're declining? Well, what's missing? What is inside of you that is unwilling to die for the cause?" And he's like, "I'm too important to die." And he's like, "No, you're nothing." So they start getting into a fight. And Manta just immediately grabs him by the throat, just being like, "You promised me that this would be different. You promised me we'd have order and a purpose, and you're the same as the rest of them. You have no idea what you're doing." And we see his eyes start glowing red. So we cut over to Reverse Flash getting Parasite. And Reverse Flash is like, "Hey man, there's a whole buffet right outside if you got enough energy to get out there." And Parasite takes a bit of Reverse Flash's energy, and he's like, "Ooh, a buffet, you say?" So he gets out, he starts absorbing all the explosive energy, all the guns and stuff, just causing Hulk levels of chaos and pandemonium. Reverse Flash gets out with Deadshot, just being like, "All right, yeah, he's taking care of things in there. Don't worry about it. What do we do next?" So we cut over to Manta, who's trying to open the door to get out of the vault, and he's like, I don't even know how to do this. And Saladin's like, "You'll never escape." And he's like, "Never mind, figured it out." And he's like, "No, I didn't mean the door. I meant I've activated the time bomb." And as a reminder to viewers, time bomb sends things back in time. That's the specialty thing. So it's got 2 minutes on the timer. We see that all the rest of the crew is outside. They're trying to figure out what to do. Mantis just steps out and he's like, "Hey, we need to get moving. Let's go." And he's like, "Wait, hold on. What are you doing here? I thought you were in deep with them. What's going on?" He's like, "I just killed their leader. It was an undercover mission. I was undercover." Deadshot. He's like, No. We were talking privately, and you were still saying all of that stuff." And Manta's like, "I got alone with him, and I managed to take out the leader. I think I know what I'm doing. What did you do this mission?" And Deadshot's like, "Well," and then all of a sudden some kids start throwing rocks at him as well. So they all load up in the back of the truck and they're like, "God, these kids are awful. Jesus, why are they doing this?" One of them, though, has a gun, takes a shot at their rearview mirror, and just like, "Okay, all right, we need to bail." So as they're driving away, Parasite's like, "What the hell got into those kids?" And Harley's just like, "It was me. I did. Oh, God." And Manta's like, "Don't worry about it. They're going back in time. They won't be able to hurt anybody anymore." And he explains about the time bomb and says it's all going off. It's got like 45 seconds. And Reverse Flash is like, "When were you going to mention all this?" He's like, "Who cares? They're literally the bad guys. Who cares about it?" And Reverse Flash is like, "But there's people in that town. There are kids." And everyone else on the team is like, "Those kids were throwing rocks. They deserve to die. Screw them." And Deadshot's like, "Hey, look, if we don't have time to turn back, we'd never make it out. There's just not enough time. There's nothing we can do." And everyone's like, "Yeah, nah, it's done." Like, they love death. They worship it, whatever. And everyone looks all sad about it, or at least looks down. And Reverse Flash is like, "Nah, everyone deserves saving." So he jumps off the truck, runs back into town. 10 seconds left on the bomb. He grabs it. Nobody on the crew is saying anything, but we get the narration once more of him talking to Harley, saying like, "So you're not a monster anymore? Well, I don't know about that, but I hope I'm not, and I hope that that's enough." And we see him rush it over into the sea, drop the bomb into the ocean, and start running away. But he trips on the surface of the water. He starts tumbling, and he gets caught up in the explosion. And we see him just being ripped to pieces in the time bomb, theoretically sent back in time. So we cut back over to Belle Reve. We see Waller's being given the news by her secretary saying, "Hey, turns out they succeeded at the mission and everything went well, but Reverse Flash died. So, break a few eggs and omelets and stuff like that." And Waller's like, "Great, fantastic, but while we were focusing on that, Vic Sage managed to get me reassigned to be the field agent that deals with Suicide Squad stuff. And that's just awful for me. He's planning something. I hate that. I need you, Miss Secretary Lady, to find out what he's doing. Keep an eye on him. Prove you're not worthless." And our final page is back in the city. we see that Pearl group has shown back up again. There's a soldier and some businessman looking type guy who've come across that venomified body, the guy who was unconscious, and they say like, "Ah, man, look at this freak show. We can work with this though." And they say, "Yep, the Task Force X's days are most assuredly numbered." So what does this all mean? Is it all a plan by Vic Sage? Why did they want a random guy who got splashed with venom? Who knows? In terms of wrapping up the story, it's good. I won't say it's great, it's good. I think it does a good job of taking all the different plot points and managed to put a little bow on them while still setting up things that are moving ahead in the future. Solid, not going to complain about that. What I'm going to give extra kudos to is giving Reverse Flash, Daniel West, an actual honest-to-God, like, arc across these issues. He was not utilized at all for most of them, and then all of a sudden they're just like, he's a joke, he's nothing, he's a nobody. And then all of a sudden just giving him this hero moment and saying like, no, I may be a monster, but like I have to believe that I can be better. And him proving it as well. And it's like, you know, Harley's catatonic at this point, but you have to recognize that like she would see that as well. I don't know. I think that's actually a really, really solid point that they put on this character to basically say like, yeah, no, all these other people, do they feel like they can be redeemed? Maybe not, but Reverse Flash was different in that way. So no, it's great writing in that viewpoint. I think I am going to give this one an A, just mainly because of the way it wrapped that up. The art, the way it was told panel to panel, it also was just fantastic. And I did like Black Manta's bit as well, where you don't know whether or not this was all an act. You would think that it probably wasn't. You think he probably did go native, but he managed to spin it and get it back to working for him. So, nah, it's a good issue. It's very, very well written, very well done. So 8 for sure. Grayson Annual number 2, written by Tom King and Tim Seeley, art by Álvaro Martínez. So this is kind of an interstitial. Last issue, we had Grayson returning to Gotham. He was essentially told you have to come back to Spiral. And there's just a little bit in the middle where he has agreed to come back to Spiral and he's about to get ready to, but he hasn't actually left Gotham yet. And this slots in right there. But first we cut back to several years ago during the early years where Dick was actually still Robin. We see him and Batman on their cycles. There's chaos in the streets, some big thing that all the cops are lined up for. And turns out it's Blockbuster. It's, for anyone who doesn't know, just this big hulking brute guy who... It's Hulk. It's just Hulk. That's all it is. So we see Blockbuster's coming through, wrecking cars, doing whatever. Batman and Robin are leading him on a chase throughout the streets when all of a sudden he's hit by this pink light, which I guess weakens him. We get to that much later in the issue. But Robin manages to lead him over an open pothole. And then underneath, inside the pothole, is Superman, who he's like, well, I hope he's softened up. I'm not sure I could take him otherwise. And so as soon as Blockbuster's about to leap over the hole, Superman comes up, just punches him in the face, knocks him out. And Batman continues dousing him in the pink light, which is some sort of thing that weakens him. And we get a fist bump between Dick and Superman, where Superman calls him red and Dick calls Superman blue. So Blockbuster being led back into a containment thing by Star Labs, and Batman's like, let Superman stay for the glory, we gotta get out of here. And Robin's like, but Superman is cool. And it's like, no, he's a liability. We're in the early years, I don't trust him yet. And Robin's like, but he's just a guy. And he's like, no, he's young and untrained, and he's not human. He's not like you or me. And he's most certainly not just a guy. And then they drive off on their motorcycles. Cut to now. We see Dick is standing on top of the tallest tower in Gotham. And he's like, well, Gotham, I guess this is goodbye once again. And he takes a little eye implant, the Hypnos, and he puts it in. And it literally gives him a voiceover for anyone who's just picking this up fresh new, saying like, your Hypnos 2.0 will let you do X, Y, and Z and blah, blah, blah. Thank you for joining Spiral. Warranty is 90 days. So he jumps off the tower and he's like, all right, well, I got to say goodbye the old-fashioned way with some acrobatics. And as he jumps off, Superman comes bounding over rooftops and grabs hold of him and says, you don't gotta jump. I promise you life can be worth it. Oh God, I hope that you're okay. And he looks down at Dick's face, and the hypnos turns it all swirly. It's just essentially a blank face. And he says, Clark? And Superman's like, oh, Jesus, what then? He ends up dropping Dick from like 30 stories up. And Superman lands, is like, oh, God, okay, I wish I could fly still, but fair enough. So he starts jumping down, trying to catch Dick, ends up hitting the ground before him, and he's like, where'd you go? Turns out that Dick just did some acrobatics, and he's like, hey, Superman, it's fine. Check it out. And he turns off the hypnos, shows that he's Dick Grayson, and there's a beat, and then Superman's like, come here, man. They give each other a hug. He's like, I thought you were dead. Like, what happened to Forever Evil? He's like, yeah, we faked my death so I could join a super spy organization. It's a long story. What about you? You're jumping around and you're not wearing your Kryptonian battle armor? He's like, yeah, I got a new power. It ends up draining me of energies, and now I ride a motorcycle and wear a t-shirt. He's like, okay, fair enough. And one of Dick's things is he's like, yeah, we were researching this group, Spiral, that has superhero secret identities. That's what they do. And Superman's like, wait a minute, my identity got leaked. Do you think maybe our books are linked? And Grayson goes, no, not at all. Almost certainly not. But that's the end of that. So we then see Clark still has a bit of super hearing. He hears someone coming down with like a shoveling trowel down the alleyway, and then all of a sudden whispers start talking about points, triple points, double points, gonna get some points, all the points for me. And he's like, okay, there's only one group that cares about points. It's the Fist of Cain. And they say, Clark Kent, you're an alien. That's worth double points. First to murder an alien. So all these people from the Fist of Cain start attacking, and Superman's like, who the hell are they? And it also, Dick's like, wait a minute, how do they all know your identity? It's like, oh yeah, it was outed like to the general public, not just like a supervillain or whatever. So they try shooting Superman. Dick's also in the fight. They're doing whatever they can. One of the Fist of Cain members is labeled as Dirty Girl, and she's just standing off to the side loading up a missile launcher. Grayson explains who the Fist of Cain are, says that they are a cult that worships the teachings of this depopulationist named Christian Fleischer, who basically says, go around killing people. It's your natural duty, and you get points for killing people. So at that point, they're like, yeah, it's just a cult of murder. It's whatever. So the Dirty Girl files off a missile. Dick's like, if you can barely take bullets, Superman, because you're weaker right now, you might want to move out of the way of the missile. And he's like, nah, I got this. And he punches the missile down to the ground, which still explodes and sends him flying into a building. That building happening to be a high-class fancy restaurant full of rich people. And once all of the Fist of Cain members come in, they say, hey, rich people are worth double points too. So they're about to start killing innocents, and that's where Grayson comes in saying, hey, I'm a member of the group Spiral. Spiral killed your leader, the Christian Fleischer guy, which makes me quadruple points if you make me suffer. And so all of their attention is pulled back away from the rich people, back to Clark and Dick. They start stumbling their way out the building, because Superman is a little injured at that point, and it's like, yeah, we need to get away from downtown, we need to get out of here, my bike's over there. And so they hop onto Superman's motorcycle, and Dick is like, I hope you call this thing the Supercycle. He's like, they don't usually last long enough for me to name them. I try not to get attached. So Superman asks where they should get going in order to stay away from things. He says, yeah, after you guys attacked Bruce in Endgame when you were corrupted by the Joker, that whole area of town is now under construction, so let's go there. So they start making their way out there. Superman's like, so this is what you do? You do like fighting against cults and super spy stuff and like exotic locales? And he's like, yeah, and also Midnighter. He's just constantly a thing, but whatever. We see that the Fist of Cain all has their own little like Mad Max style dune buggies or whatever. They're coming after Dick and Clark. And it's like, okay, well, you know, Dick, I'm remembering now how you used to act, how you used to behave. You're like an acrobat who he jumps before he even knows what he's going to be grabbing hold of. And Grayson's like, yeah, and you used to be invulnerable, which meant that you always leapt in and didn't really worry about your own safety. Batman hated both of our styles because he liked to plan down to every last detail. So no wonder we drove him nuts. At that point, one of the female Fist of Cains comes up, has a gun trained on Dick, who still has his hypnos thing turned on. So he just pops it off for a second, gives like a sultry glare at her, just like, hey there. And she's so distracted that she hits a pothole and ends up flying off her bike. We see that as they're approaching the end of this road, There's a guy standing in the middle of the road later on. We'll get to him. Another one gets flipped off of his bike, takes a sip of a Slurpee that is taped to his chest, and then all of a sudden has the super speed to catch back up to his speeding bike. And Superman's like, you didn't tell me Fist of Cain had superpowers. And he's like, I thought that we were done with the stolen superpowers plot, but apparently they got super smoothies. So that's great. We see the guy who's standing in the middle of the road also has the powers. He manages to punch the super cycles smack dab in the middle, causes them to do a flip over, and Dick is like, that's the coolest thing ever. And it turns out that Superman did name this bike. It's Lana. So we then come back to Dirty Girl, who is talking to someone saying, hey, you share your power with us, we'll share our power with you. You give us your hate and we'll give you retribution. And it turns out that Dirty Girl has enlisted the help of Blockbuster, because the opening was just a hint of what's coming. So he's going to help kill Superman and Grayson here. Grayson's like, okay, well, we're going to have to ditch your bike. I'm sorry that you named it. And it's like, yeah, it's all right. I like this bike even better than my previous bike, Vroomy. So Grayson puts a bomb on it. It ends up crashing smack dab into Blockbuster, which gives them just enough time to escape and go into hiding off the edge of this highway that they're on. So they do a little trapeze flip. Superman catches Grayson in like a fireman's carry, and he's like, it's good I'm comfortable in my sexuality, because this is very emasculating. And he's like, everyone says that. All the guys say that. Why do guys have to make it weird? So again, Grayson sets off another bomb to distract them while they jump away. And Grayson's like, yeah, I know where there's a nearby Batman safe house. We can go to that. So it's in a construction yard. They go down into it. Superman uses his super hearing, and it's just like they managed to get to us up above, but they can't find the entrance. So we have a little bit of time here. Grayson doesn't know much about Blockbuster, so he asks Clark. Clark apparently wrote an expose, gives the whole backstory on Blockbuster. It's not important. It literally just says the last time we really saw him was in Hawk and Dove, which nobody read, so whatever. That being said, I believe he was in Savage Hawkman, which was after Hawk and Dove, but whatever, it doesn't matter. And they basically say, yeah, Batman made a thing that could strip him of a little bit of his invulnerability and his powers and whatever, enough to take him out. Grayson, can you remake that? Do you know how? And he's like, no. You know, it's. Let me tell you a funny story, Superman. I took my Nightwing name from a story you told me from Kryptonian Legend, and I thought, like, man, if this is a Kryptonian Legend, Superman looks up to this, that must make it super awesome, right? I thought it would give me, like, some sort of power, but, like, I'm quickly realizing that I'm just a guy. Like, I'm not Batman. I can't build something from scratch. I'm just a guy. And Superman's like, okay, fair enough. If we can't make this tech and they are right on top of us here, I'm going to make a call that you're not going to like. I'm going to call Lex Luthor. And we see Blockbuster and them are just tearing up the stuff above. And Grayson's like, no way, no. He's the one who killed me in Forever Evil. I'm not trusting him. And Superman's like, look, if Bruce is out of commission and you can't build this thing, Lex Luthor may be the smartest man on the planet. We don't have many other options. He could do it just from hearing your description. He's like, no, he killed me and he cares nothing about his own ego. And Superman's like, I know that. And like, he probably absolutely hates the fact that like I came out that I'm a farm boy who ends up being Superman. But if I have to call him and beg for his help, that's just going to reinforce his belief that I'm faking all of this. Like, you have to trust me, okay? It's like, well, what if he decides to like do something negative with it or whatever? Like, look, Clark, you got to know that over all of this stuff, over the previous 12 issues of Grayson, I have changed. And Superman's like, look, maybe that's so. You've been hanging out with super spies. You've seen the worst of humanity, the duplicitous nature. But the Dick Grayson I knew would not let the world get the better of him. And we get the flashback over to Batman saying Superman's not just a guy, which obviously takes on a whole nother meaning here. And we see that to some extent he agrees. Lex Luthor's like, hey, Superman, or Mr. Kent, I should say. My secretary gave you your voicemail. I did a scan of the area. I see 2 heat signatures, one of which has spiral tech, so that's obviously Dick Grayson. Good to see you 2 guys are hooking up again. And I thought to myself, and this is as like Blockbuster and them are breaking into the vault like simultaneously. Lex is like, well, good thing you're both there, because I thought to myself, well, I could just kill both of these people at once because you're both been pains in my asses for quite some time now. So I was sending 45 millimeter LexCorp steel into your bodies. And then we see as Blockbuster opens up the vault, a huge blast of energy comes, and Lex says, but then I thought better of it because I love the idea of Superman crawling on his knees and begging me for help. So yeah, I made the thing. I teleported it over. I also sent a bunch of drones to watch it happen because I want to see if you are going to fail, so be it. And we see the pink light douses all the people in the big energy explosion. Superman and Grayson pop out and they immediately take care of business. So we cut to the next morning. Blockbuster is being let in by GCPD, all the rest of the people there. GCPD's like, hey, a lot of these people have outstanding warrants in like 25 states. This is like the biggest haul we've ever brought in since the other Batman. This is incredible. And Superman and Grayson are just watching over the sunset, and Grayson's like, hey, look, you've done great. Even if you don't have all your powers anymore, you're still a legend. And Clark is like, look, I lost my powers. You're a spy. Bruce is an amnesiac. Like, legends don't change. Legends stay constant. None of us are legends. We're all just guys. And Grayson's like, all right, well, I got to get over to Qatar for something. Can you give me a boost? And he's like, I can't, I hitch rides on airplanes. I can't do that. And he's like, all right, well, could you jump me to the airport at least? And he's like, if I have to fireman carry you, are you going to make it weird again? And he's like, is it ever not weird? And we see him say like, you know what? I was proud that you took on the name of Nightwing. Like it was something that made me happy. And a part of me is sad that you gave it up. But if we're talking about, you know, having to go through change and being just a guy or whatnot, maybe the best name for that is Grayson. And we see him hopping off as the Jim Gordon bat suit has the reflection of them in the visor. The end. So this one, it says script was written by Tim Seeley. And I definitely think you can feel the difference between Tom King's style and Tim Seeley's style. Because just between, I mean, last week had an issue of Grayson. There's a definitive difference to how the two come out as how they're written. That being said, I really still like this one. I think this one it's got a very clear point to it. It's playing with what these two characters are both going through in their own continuities right now. And I like the idea of it saying like, yeah, no, this is a radical shift in our status quo. All of us are changing right now. And that is something that can be used to make a broader point rather than it just being essentially a marketing ploy. So I like the way they take that. And if I have only one complaint, it's the Blockbuster stuff. I get that they just need to have a big enough threat that like Superman can't immediately punch it down, but Blockbuster's boring. Like I'm nothing against the writer here, but like Blockbuster, the fact that it was used in Hawk and Dove is kind of all I need to point out with is Blockbuster is a like D tier threat. So yeah, I mean that's basically that. I'd still give this one, I think I'm going to say an 8. It might honestly be an 8.5. I'm going to stick with an 8, though, but it's very close. I really, really am struggling with that. But no, it's a great issue. It's definitely, I wouldn't say standalone, because obviously it's very wrapped in what is going on in the continuity of the book, but it also is something that I think does a good job of self-explaining everything it needs to do outside of what's happening from the book as well. The Superman stuff, you know what's going on. The Blockbuster stuff even is explained to you here. So kudos on that front, but definitely worth the 8. Green Lantern Annual number 4, written by Robert Venditti, art by Pascal Alixe and Martin Coccolo. So this one jumps around a little bit, and it also includes bits that are later defined as exaggerations, so forgive me if I don't get the timeline exactly right, but we see we're on some random-ass planet of Wayne, or a moon of the planet Wayne, and Green Lantern's flying in, and he's got a bunch of Green Lantern rings or something on his tail. All of the aliens of this planet say, oh, everyone scatter, it's Lantern showing up, we gotta hide, so everyone starts running. And as everyone gets off the street, Hal Jordan's looking for some place to hide, and he comes across Lobo, and he says, the Warrens, how do I get under? The Warrens, I guess, are like the hiding spots or whatever like that. And Lobo's like, hey, that's a nice glove, and I know who you are. And he's like, well, you better forget who I am. And he's like, yeah, all right, whatever. If I get bored or there's money in it, I'll look you back up. Anyway, and he presses a button and opens up a stairway to the lower half. And he's like, do you know a better place to get out of sight? And because Lobo's walking off now, and he's like, oh, I'm not hiding. Like, I'm planning on finding them or whatever. And then he's just gone. Like... Lobo, for anyone who hasn't been reading Sinestro, is a major player in current Lantern stuff, but whatever, I guess he was just here for like 30 seconds. So Hal Jordan goes down underneath the city or whatever, some underground tunnels, and he lights it up for like a quarter second, and then immediately some Green Lantern construct drills start drilling through the ceiling, and we see a bunch of Lantern members, including Selak, who we know for certain is currently lost in the Green Lantern Lost Army book, says, hey, you're done running, Jordan, you're under arrest. And we see that we are currently actually, like, that was all a story. It was set before. This is the now, where Hal is sitting on his ship with Trapper and Virgo and is apparently telling this story of how he encountered the Green Lantern Corps and they wanted to take him in after he went renegade and all that. And they're trying to look through space to find a pattern of like what happened with Virgo's planet, see if it continues happening. Darlene's like, yeah, no, that's totally easy. I'll just look through all of space to try to figure that out and do whatever. And he's like, no, you don't have to look through all of space. Start with Virgo's planet and expand outwards, not looking for where something is, but where life is not. Look for voids of life and whatever else like that. And she's like, oh, that's actually an okay idea. You're still an idiot, though, Hal. And it's like, all right, fine, whatever. So at that point, Trapper's like, yeah, all right, tell us more about this story. Because after I heard it, I heard you went maniac and you took out the entire Corps like a crazy man. And Hal puts a little gag over his mouth and he's just like, all right, if you want to hear the story, you got to shut up. So we cut back to the story where these Corps members showed up and they're like, you took the gauntlet. Guy Gardner once put it on. He said it felt like wielding 12 rings, but we can still take you down. And they're like, do you honestly trust Guy Gardner's math? It's worth so much more than that. And he basically says, look, I don't have the ring anymore, fair enough, but I do still have the willpower. And they start blasting him with whatever Lantern Corps blasts. He makes shields. He does get pushed back on his heels a little bit, but eventually he creates this giant construct of like a bunch of hands and eventually an entire larger size version of himself that just starts stomping around. And all the rest of the Corps, they're highly competent. They start making their own weapons to take him out. And he's like, look, I gave you the chance to escape with your lives. If you don't want them, then I'll gladly take them. And he swats them down to the ground, just hurls them full force. Tells them that they shouldn't have hunted him, and he makes some more constructs to like break through their shields, and then eventually just like stomps on them and says like, you should have stayed away, this is how you pay the price. And they're technically still alive, but they are all very much on the verge of it. And he's like, oh, do you see the light yet? And they're like, you're a bastard, Jordan. And it's like, oh, I'll keep going if you don't leave now. And they put on like handcuffs and all this stuff to try to contain him. And Hal's looking at 2-6. He's like, oh, I thought that you were a good guy, Hal. They said good things about you. I can't believe I ever thought that. And he's like, oh, 2-6, you're going to make me cry. And we see all the rest of the Corps has him all wrapped up or whatever, but he's got this crazy manic grin on his face. And Selak is like, fall back, it's an order, we got to get out of here. And so they all fly off. Hal just immediately like breaks out of his containment, and he's like, that's right, you fly away and you tell the rest of the Corps, anyone who comes after me is a dead man, I'll kill you all. And he laughs this crazy bad guy laugh. And we cut back to the story, and Virgo and Trapper are both looking. Trapper's like, that story needs a happier ending. I really don't understand why you have a no-kill rule. If it were me, all of those lanterns would be 100% chunks just left on the ground. And Hal gets right up in his face and is just like, that's why they don't sell any stories about you, Trapper. No one's ever heard of you before. But did you hear about me before you came onto my ship? Yeah, that's what being able to instill fear does. You know, you let them know that you're the toughest around and nobody ever comes messing with you. And he just like makes some constructs to threaten Trapper, holds like a knife to his throat. He's like, that's how you get a reputation in this horrible universe that we lived in. But no, you're all scorched earth. You're not smart enough to get on the level I'm on. And Trapper's like, I was plenty well known, I'll have you know, Virgo. I came to your planet, didn't I? And Virgo's like, shut up, Trapper. So then we go back to the planet that we were on last issue, where they just stopped in and like helped a little ghost town or whatever. And we see this little girl playing with a toy and pretending it's a Green Lantern. It's specifically Hal, and just like, wee, fwish, fwish, making the flashy noises. And we see this guy come up and he's like, hey, little girl, who taught you how to play that game? And it's like, oh, this Green Man, he was here and he made green stuff, and now we're safe again because all the bullies are gone. And he's like, oh, that's super cool. Could I see your toy? And she's like, oh yeah, you can take it, I'll have another. And he's like, fantastic. And then he just grabs the toy and like crushes it in his hand and just like, all right, someone in this place knows the most about Hal Jordan. Find that person and bring them to me. So then we cut to Hal's bunk. He is clearly having some sort of like depression episode. All of a sudden his gauntlet lights up, and it's all of the lanterns that he theoretically beat up in his story. And he's like, oh, I miss you guys. Where are you? This wasn't the plan. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Kilowog, we should be back together by now. If something's happened to you guys, I want to be blasting through it with you. Oh, God, I'll find you. And then Virgo comes in, just be like, hey, man, who you talking to? And he's like, nothing. It's this crazy gauntlet. It's pop-ups, you know, like whatever. And Virgo's like, yeah, hey, listen, I was thinking about your story. That doesn't fit. Like, I watched you in the previous issue. You, like, saved that entire ghost town. You also, like, saved me. None of that fits with this maniacal, like, oh, you're a dead man if you ever come back to haunt me sort of thing. Like, what's the real story here? And he tells the ship to stop listening. I'm not sure why. I guess Darlene would ruin his reputation if she knew. And Hal basically says, like, yeah, okay, look, I told you the story the way that a guy that was sitting at a bar was way too drunk. He was telling it to me because he didn't realize it was about me. And yeah, what the people who were hiding out, who were underneath, they heard it. Maybe they saw some stuff, but it got lost in a game of telephone. What actually happened is I was doing the bare minimum to keep the lanterns at bay. I wasn't like hurting them. I wasn't doing anything. I was just doing what I could and then running away. Like, that's what it was. But when I heard him tell the story and he had such awe, like, I realized the lanterns are gone. Whatever's going on, whatever happened to them, there's no more law left in the universe. So if I want to stay alive, if I want to be able to protect my own and my reputation, I got to do this. I got to pretend to be this guy who's too brutal than anything else. That's the only thing I can do. I mean, that Kilowog was my best friend, and I did beat him up. Like, that did happen, but like, I feel awful about it. So at that point, 5 minutes are up. The ship starts talking again, just being like, hey, yeah, we have a pattern. We're taking a new course. Like, I'm sure you want to go right into the depth of it, despite the fact that it puts all of us at risk. And I was like, not exactly, but we do have a new direction we need to head in. And we cut over back to the planet where the one guy who was like the main one helping out Hal and crew is being tossed around. We see a hologram with the Omega Men on it. I'm not entirely sure why, but we get a mention of it later. And we see that these guys are known as the Gray Agents. And they're like, hey, if you know anything about Hal, you'll talk. He's a criminal. And they're like, no, he was our savior. I'll never tell. And this guy steps up named Speechmaker, who I guess does like a mental mind wipe, mind whammy on this guy. He turns into a vegetable, and they're able to scan through his memories and see what ship he's on, when he left, and what direction he was heading in. So Gray Agents are like, all right, contact the base, let them know what's up, and we'll find out if any of the people on this planet are worth investigating as well. And then one of the guys looks at the Omega Men on the hologram, just being like, hey, why don't we chase down these Omega Men? They look to be like they're tough people, tough customers. And the leader of the Gray Agents says, hey, look, we take down, or in this new universe without the Green Lanterns or whatever, it's every organization for itself. If we can take down the one who was taking down Green Lanterns, the one who's wanted most in the universe, that's the one who's going to get to write the laws moving forward. So That's why Hal Jordan is our number one priority. He's dangerous, and therefore we need to get to him. It's not who Hal Jordan is, it's what he represents. He's a legend, and that legend has to be killed. So that's the issue. I'm going to be upfront with you. I don't know whose art it is, whether it's Martin Coccolo or Pascal Alixe. I'm not a fan of how they did Hal. He looks like he's 13. I mean, he's got the long hair thing going on, but there's something in his face where he just looks really, really young, and it just doesn't work for me. That out of the way, I don't really have a problem with the rest of the story. It is a little bit weird that it's set in this kind of nebulous time frame and saying like, yeah, no, there was a bit of time after I stole the gauntlet where I was still being hunted, and then the Green Lanterns disappeared, and like, fair, fine enough, you can have that, but like, I don't know. It's part of the integral story. It is clearly something that's going to be paid off on in future issues. This isn't just a standalone story where we're doing this whole like, and that's why I have to keep this bad reputation and all that stuff going on. Like, no, this is something that's going to be hit up upon, but it also feels so separate. It feels like it is so skippable that when we get to the bits that can't be skipped, it almost feels like an afterthought of like, oh, but like, here's the thing that's part of the story. So I don't know. I'm of two minds of this one. I think I'm mostly less impressed than I am impressed. I feel like there are moments to this that really shine. The moment where he makes the constructs of all of his Green Lantern buddies, and none of them are talking back, and he's just like begging for them. I like that. That's very well done. But everything else is just kind of mediocre for me at best. So I'm going to say this one is probably a 6.5. Not worth the annual prices for sure, and not worth the length either, but it's okay. It's not the worst thing I've ever read by far. And that's it. That is all the comics that came out from DC Comics this September 30th, 2015. And next week, oh boy, next week are we in for a treat. I cannot overstate this enough. So, I mean, I think we have like 13, 12 comics somewhere in there, but it's not about how many. Let me walk you through this with this. So next week we have Action Comics, Batman Beyond, Cyborg, Detective Comics, Green Arrow, a second Green Arrow because apparently the annual couldn't come out this week for whatever reason. So 2 Green Arrows, Green Lantern, Lobo, Midnighter, and Omega Man. But then we got 2 new titles starting. Now, one of those is a weekly, Batman and Robin Eternal. I have never read that one. I have no idea what it's about. All I know is the fallout and the new character that we get out of it. So looking forward to that one. It is 26 weeks, so it's basically going to take us up until the end of this show. But the other one, the big one, the second title that is starting next week, is Telos. Now, Convergence sucked, all right? Let's not pretend it didn't. Like, it was a bad book. It was poorly written. It was poorly planned out. The fact, the sheer audacity DC has to have to make a 6-issue series of Telos. Oh, my God. Like, are you kidding me? This is, like, there has been some poor decision-making at DC in the past, but a Telos book... I have to imagine it sold like 3 copies. I can't even... what? Are you kidding me? So yeah, we're going to get Telos next week. I mean, Omega Man's cool. I really like that book, and Batman Beyond and stuff like that. But like, Telos, come on. So yeah, all that's coming out next week. But if you have any comments on Telos specifically, I really want to hear about those. Leave those in the comment section down beneath this video if you're watching the YouTube version. If you're listening to the audio version, switch over to the YouTube version, because I'm pretty sure we're like 3 months ahead of you, because I suck at uploading the audio versions. But if by chance you're still there, we have a subreddit, we have a Discord, we have a Patreon. All those are linked in the description. But YouTube also has memberships now. Do I do anything with that? Not at all. You will get nothing from me, but there is content hidden behind a paywall. So go ahead and check that out if you're interested. But that is it for me. Thank you very much for watching, listening, how you just consume this podcast. Be sure to tune in next week for Telos. And always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.